Number one, Ibble Dibble here. Hello, friends.
I'd like to welcome all you ignorant ass bitches, critics, complainers, disgruntled rappers, and racists especially,
To the final installment of Prince Harry and Tom Bradby on ITV.
Oh, man.
I know my views are dropping off a cliff, but this is the interview that keeps giving. Number 40, Harry chats with Tom about his lawsuits against the media and shows us his whole ass.
And who have you got court cases against, and why is
You probably know more than I do, don't you?
Well, it's a news story. We follow it.
Go on, for you go first. So as a journalist.
Okay, you've got three cases which are very rarely referred to against news group, which may or may not come to court. You've got a case against the Mirror, which may or may not come to court, and you've, with others, including Doreen Lawrence, Stephen Lawrence's mum, you've taken a case against the Mayor.
Surprise! Real people can't show up to their jobs unprepared and expect to keep their jobs. Did you really think you'd catch Tom Bradby off guard today?
You probably know more than I do, don't you?
I'm sorry, I'm being so impolite today. What is a synonym for showing us his whole ass? Maybe number 41, showing us his true colors?
I have to say, in all three cases, the accusations are very grave, and the stakes, I would say, are very high. I mean, I would say certainly, like the Mail, you're suggesting, they hire private investigators to break into people's houses to plant listening devices. I mean, this is off the scale. They deny absolutely. Let's be clear, you would owe them a pretty abject apology if you're not right, if it's not proven.
Well, if it wasn't wrong, they would presumably sue us. If they want to hold us and the rich and powerful to account, and they want to police society, then who's policing them?
Wow!
Super dick.
The audacity of these peasants trying to hold the rich and powerful accountable. Sue them into oblivion. Bankrupt them with spurious claims. Let them eat cake.
Mann, sind die dick, Mann. Super dick. Alter, ist der dick, Mann?
Voll cool, man.
Number 42, stop dragging William into it.
That's something that William and I have talked about for many, many years. Who is policing them?
Harry, you're 38. William said so is no longer an acceptable excuse, although I do find it funny that somewhere deep down inside you know that he's still much more well-liked and highly regarded than you are, and you personally consider him an authority figure. Interesting. Number 43, he claims any impulse he has to do right in the world comes from his time in the army and not his family and the morals they taught him.
Having spent 10 years in the army, I learned a specific set of values, and if I see wrongdoing, I will be lured towards trying to resolve it, especially when I've had the unique perspective that I have had. I've seen behind the curtain.
I have always gotten the impression that Harry was out sick on Noblesse Oblige Day, but his handlers need to go through their prepared answers and eliminate a certain proportion of the circular logic he relies on in his explanations. He was only in the army because it was a core value in his family to serve in the military, and their royal status gained him admission to Sandhurst, which he would have never otherwise qualified for, gained him graduation from Sandhurst, which he would have never otherwise accomplished, and gained him an officer's rank, which he did not deserve and would never have had without his family. Which brings me to number 44. In his quest to appear extremely noble and conscientious, he reaches farther and crashes harder than an RAF Reaper, likening bitching about the UK media from his mansion in Montecito to serving his nation.
My father said to me that it was probably a suicide mission to try and change the press. If I can't continue to serve my country while based in the UK, for numerous different reasons, one because of lack of security, then I will continue to serve my country from abroad. And changing the media, who I believe is at the epicenter of so many of the problems across the UK where people are suffering, then I'm going to try and make a difference. And it may be incredibly hard, and I don't know how long it's going to take. but it is 100% worth it.
Number 45, H&M still haven't Googled the definition of hate speech.
I'm happy with them talking crap about me every single day because I know it's not true. What I draw the line at is when you're inciting hatred towards myself and or my wife and my children.
The UN Strategy and Plan of Action on Hate Speech defines hate speech as, quote, any kind of communication and speech, writing, or behavior that attacks or uses pejorative or discriminatory language with reference to a person or a group on the basis of who they are. In other words, based on their religion, ethnicity, nationality, race, color, descent, gender, or other identity factor. Hate speech refers to offensive discourse targeting a group or an individual based on inherent characteristics that may threaten social peace, end quote. Legally, by the way, this is not the definition. The definition legally, if they end up at The Hague, is, quote, incitement to discrimination, hostility, or violence, end quote. In other words, hate speech is not calling Harry a racist, calling Meghan a race baiter, calling Meghan a bitch, or calling Harry a dumb cunt. Simply insulting, even very rudely so, does not qualify. Hate speech is not tolerated in the press as a rule. Even press with potentially but not provably racist or sexist undertones gets criticized by other members of the press in their media outlets. Hate speech is really only tolerated in the most niche social media. That's how Parler got invented, racists being kicked off Twitter and kicked off Reddit, and then Parler was removed from the App Store. Harry's claim that his family is being consistently targeted with discriminatory and pejorative language on public platforms with no recrimination is simply false, and that's not something that has changed since they left the UK. This central claim of theirs has never been true. H&M have receipts, text messages, screenshots of Instagram and Snapchat and Twitter messages for the dumbest stuff in the universe. They showed us 10,000 of them in their Netflix special. If a British newspaper really called her the N-word, like she claimed in her interview with The Cut, why haven't we seen a picture or screenshot of that anywhere? Meghan cried in the Netflix special about tweets threatening her children's lives, but again, no receipts, no picture, no screenshot. If her security team really printed out a tweet like that on paper and put it in a binder for her to read, why didn't she just walk over and show us the binder? When you're making scandalous accusations, you need to bring receipts. They never have receipts when it counts. Harry tries to use the Jeremy Clarkson article to prove his point, but it actually proves my point.
You know, when we're talking about accountability, just recently, which I know you know about, the Jeremy Clarkson article. So not only did what he said was horrific and is hurtful and cruel towards my wife, but it also encourages other people around the UK and around the world, men particularly, to go and think that it's acceptable to treat women that way.
Clarkson did not use hate speech, but he did arguably incite violence by jokingly saying he wanted to replicate a scene in Game of Thrones with Meghan, where the incredibly unpopular Queen Cersei is forced to walk naked through the town square with the citizens yelling, "Shame, shame," and throwing stuff at her. The hyperbolic Clarkson said he hated Meghan on a cellular level, which is actually a jab at Meghan's terrible writing. She's used the phrases cellular level and granular implants on her podcast in clumsy efforts at sounding intellectual. He also says that he'd be throwing excrement as opposed to, I don't know, rotten apples. Rotten eggs. That's what people used to throw back in the day, I think. No, Rotten Tomatoes, right? There's literally a website, Rotten Tomatoes. I'm really losing my culture, guys.
Hello. We are two females from this planet.
Anyway, he was so roundly criticized that he ended up apologizing 1,000 times, getting his show canceled, asking The Sun to remove his column. Meanwhile, the UK's Culture Secretary, Michelle Donnellan, who herself is trying to push through the online safety bill, had this to say, quote, We all have a responsibility when we use our words to think about the words that we're using. People can air their opinions against views. They can challenge them. They can force apologies. They can make them think again. Did Jeremy Clarkson make a mistake? Yes, he did. But he certainly shouldn't be outlawed or censored. His column needs to be put in context. His comments weren't illegal, they were outrageous. He faced a great outcry following them, and he had to apologize very publicly. What we're really talking about here, especially, is kids seeing content that promotes suicide, self-harm, sexual abuse. These are the dreadful, horrendous things we've got to shut down. While we can all criticize Clarkson for what he said, I don't think we should be comparing apples with pears. I don't think that's the most helpful. End quote. Number 46. I know that Harry is evading taxes by refusing to ever become a citizen of the US, but that does not excuse his ignorance.
Someone in this country, if someone, especially in the US, no names mentioned, tweets or says certain things that are just categorically harmful and dangerous, you have the president and the vice president speak out against it. But everything that's to do with my wife after 6 years, they haven't said a single thing.
Tom practically jumped out of his chair. He needs to enroll in a community college or at the very least an online open university and take a basic civics course. The president and vice president definitely do not do that. They are also not the United States equivalent of the king or queen, and no one wants to live in a world where presidents, prime ministers, kings, and queens are primarily focused on policing trolls and arbitrating flame wars. Number 47, Harry plays his first Uno reverse card on the sugars, saying he and his wife unequivocally side with Lady Susan Hussey over Ngozi Fulani.
Meghan and I love Susan Hussey. I think she's great. And I also know that what she never meant any harm at all. But the response from the British press and from people online because of the stories that they wrote was horrendous. It was absolutely horrendous, the response.
That's right. Don't hurt them right away. We'll let them think about it a little first.
And this is more of an aside. I guess we'll call it point 47 and a half. For someone who thinks he's so woke, Harry is a real riblet kind of guy. He has never once expressed that he and Meghan have different feelings or thoughts about anything. He just assumes she wants what he wants, she thinks what he thinks, she would do what he does. He really seems to be genuinely convinced that she wanted to be a working royal. She never meant to insult anyone. She hates the press as much as he does. She struggles with her mental health as much as he does. She fears for her safety as much as he does. She clearly does not, Harold. I'm pretty sure Lady Susan Hussey is the old lady she told to fuck off when she was asked to wear a hat and tights. Number 48, the moment we've all been waiting for.
In the Oprah interview, you accuse members of your family of racism. You don't even...
No, we didn't.
Well,
The British press said that.
Right.
Did Meghan ever mention that they were racist?
She said there were troubling comments about
There was
skin
concern
color.
about his skin colour.
Right. Wouldn't you describe that as essentially racist?
I wouldn't, not having lived within that family.
Right.
So
You
again,
don't
going back to the
Yeah.
difference between what my understanding is because
Okay.
of my own experience, the difference between racism and unconscious bias, the two things are different. But once it's been acknowledged or pointed out to you as an individual or as an institution that you have unconscious bias, you therefore have an opportunity to learn and grow from that in order so that you are part of the solution rather than part of the problem. Otherwise, unconscious bias then moves into the category of racism.
You cursed brat! Look what you've done! I'm melting! Melting!
There are two problems here. The first problem is he said Meghan never used the word racist. The British press put it in her mouth. That is not quite true. This was the actual exchange.
You certainly must have had some conversations with Harry about it and have your own suspicions as to why they didn't want to make Archie a prince. What are those thoughts? Why do you think that is? Do you think it's because of his race? And I know that's a loaded question, but
I can give you an honest answer. In those months when I was pregnant, all around this same time, so we have in tandem the conversation of he won't be given security, he's not going to be given a title, and also concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
what?
And
Who is having that conversation with you? What?
so
There is a conversation. Hold up.
there's
Stop
several
right now.
there are several conversations
There's a
about
conversation with you
it with Harry.
about how dark your baby is going to be?
Potentially, and what that would mean or look like.
Ooh. And you're not going to tell me who had the conversation?
I think that would be very damaging to them.
Okay. So how does one have that meeting?
That was relayed to me from Harry. Those were conversations that family had with him. And I think
Whoa.
it was really hard to be able to see those as compartmentalized
Because they were
conversations.
concerned that if he were too brown, that would be a problem. Are you saying that?
I wasn't able to follow up with why, but that if that's the assumption you're making, I think that feels like a pretty safe one.
A lot of things happened in this exchange. I have a lot of thoughts on this. Let me know if you want me to do a deep dive video specifically into this exchange. But the sense of it is clearly Oprah asked if Meghan thought Archie was not immediately given the title of prince due to concerns about his color. And Meghan said, I can't be sure, but that's the impression I got, given the coincident timing of the two conversations. And if you think that's a reasonable assumption to make, I defer to your intelligence, Oprah. Of course, the fact that the specific topic and question was even asked points to the idea that H&M wanted the world to think this about the royal family and chose to introduce the concept in this manner, because this was clearly a highly staged, prepped, uncritical interview. To me, the amazing leap here actually isn't Harry claiming someone unfairly put words in Meghan's mouth. I think the way this conversation transpired was purposefully, rhetorically slippery. They put a backdoor into the software and they used it. I think the bigger leap is him trying to pin it on the British press. If anyone was putting words in Meghan's mouth, it was obviously Oprah. The American press and other Anglophone news outlets throughout the world did not interpret this differently than the British press did. Everyone speaks English. Everyone thought Meghan was calling at least one member of the royal family racist. The second piece of this is his claiming that whichever family member or members said this aren't racist, simply unconsciously biased like he was when he wore that Nazi uniform. And if they became consciously aware of their implicit racism, they would be so disgusted by themselves, they would definitely choose to change, because while they may be implicitly racist, they aren't intrinsically racist. Honestly, if I were part of the royal family, I would not be pleased being called implicitly or intrinsically racist. And if Harry purposefully let that accusation hang over my head for almost 2 years, I'd consider the damage done. I think H&M knew exactly what they were doing by not dispelling that concern in any of the many speeches they've given, in a press release, in their Netflix special, and by accepting that award from Rory Kennedy. This is a very common tactic among narcissistic abusers, claiming against all odds that they're in fact the victims because they've been misunderstood. Them purposefully smearing the reputations of their own family in an irreparably harmful manner? How could you accuse them of such a thing? Number 49, despite absolutely zero relevant education, training, experience, or sensitivity, H&M would in fact be the ideal educators, advisors, and consultants to the royal family on race relations and all matters of unconscious bias.
After an Oprah interview, they said that they were going to bring in a diversity czar. That hasn't happened. Everything that they said was going to happen hasn't happened. I've always been open to wanting to help them understand their part in it. And especially when you are the monarchy, you have a responsibility. And quite rightly, people hold you to a higher standard than others. Certainly the media should, right?
I'm sorry, Harry, what? A diverse staff?
A diversity czar.
A diversity advisor?
A diversity czar.
A diverse star?
A diversity czar.
A diversity standard?
A diversity czar.
A diversity score?
A diversity czar.
He definitely knows what he's talking about. If only I could understand him. Number 50, did you know that only the white side of the family talks about a baby's color?
You speak to any other couple, mixed race couple around the world, and you will probably find that the white side of the family have either openly discussed it or secretly discussed, what are the kids going to look like?
That's why when I go to the park, I don't mess around. I take her birth certificate, my birth certificate, my parents' birth certificates, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, everything back to the bill of sale. I'm not messing around, everybody. I'm not messing around. Oh, too soon for a slavery joke? Is that what it is? Too soon for a slavery joke. My daughter was born, she came out very pale. She was white. Like so white, my brother-in-law was like, what's happening? When does the black kick in? But she didn't stay that same color as when she was born. It's funny, she's getting a little darker as each day goes by. So now I'm having fun charting her color progress by using the cover of Michael Jackson CDs in reverse chronological order. She started out dangerous, then it was bad. Maybe we'll make it to Thriller, but it's never gonna be off the wall. Who am I kidding?
Again, for me, the difference is unconscious bias and racism. But if you are called out for unconscious bias, you need to make that right. And you have the opportunity and the choice to, but if you choose not to, then that rapidly becomes something much more serious.
You gotta get a mixed race kid, everybody. That is the thing to have. It's like having the new phone, it's awesome. A mixed race kid is like walking around with a conversation starter, whether you want to have the conversation or not. You know what I'm talking about?
Number 51, Harry always knew he'd go down in history as William's spare, but really wanted to do it with a bang.
We always knew that these two projects, both the Netflix documentary and the book, they were necessary, they were essential for historical fact and significance. I don't want my kids or other people at that age growing up thinking, oh, wow, this is what happened. It's like, no, that's not what happened. This is what happened.
Number 52, Harry still thinks he's right, the royal family is wrong, and everyone owes him and his wife an apology.
So no, I'm not stuck in the past, and I will never be stuck in the past. I've made peace with a lot of what's happened, but I am still, I guess, patiently waiting for accountability, not necessarily just for us, but because of the significance that I know that that will have to so many other people.
Don't you get it? This isn't a dumb family squabble. Harry and Meghan are historically significant. Harry and Meghan are globally significant. After all, there's never been a black princess before, right? There's never been a prince who left his country before, right? There's never been a royal who wrote a memoir before, right?
I'm sure we got things wrong, but I've continued over the last 3-4 years to ask to tell me what we got wrong so that we can address it and apologize for those things.
My comments section is open. That's it. I'm finally done critiquing the Tom Bradby interview. Let me know in the comments below what you want me to chat about next.
The dictionary definition of the grift is to engage in petty or small-scale swindling. But the true definition is expressing views you don't fully believe, either by over-exaggerating or flat-out lying, to gain money or status for their followers. Therefore, the grifter is someone that utilizes the grift.
While the grifter is not necessarily a bad person, and there are many times everyday people use the grift, like myself and Uncle Hotep. The true grifters use their grift to take from the community, leaving it worse off than they found it. Where there is despair, you will find the dark side of the grift.
And the winner of the Celebrity Grifty is Meghan Markle. Yeah!
I don't know how they could expect that after all of this time, we would still just be silent if there is an active role that the firm is playing in perpetuating falsehoods about us.
Toodles! Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.